just walk.
So, Beth, welcome to the Layered Onion podcast. I'm so excited for you to be here. Maybe you could introduce yourself to our audience and talk a little bit about all your creative pursuits.
Yes. Well, my name is Beth Kille. I am a performing singer-songwriter. As a performer, I play with the Beth Kille Band. I also play with a trio called Gin, Chocolate, and Bottle Rockets. I have an occasional duo called Kerosene Kites with my friend Eric Chelland of the Mascot Theory. And I most recently am working with a Taylor Swift cover band called Era's Encore with 5 women that are all phenomenal musicians in the area. And so that's part of my life, but I'm also the music director and co-founder of Girls Rock Camp and Ladies Rock Camp Madison, which is a 1-week day camp for kids ages 8 to 18. And they don't have to have any musical experience. They show up. We provide instruments for them to play: drums, bass, guitar, keys. They could be a vocalist. They could play ukulele or violin. They learn how to play that instrument. They form a band with fellow campers, and they write a song under the direction of musicians like myself in the community who can help mentor them in the creative process. And then they have a huge showcase at the end of the week where they put on a incredible performance for their family and friends and people in the community who come out to support them. And I've also written a book.
And that's how we met.
Songwriting. And that's how Linda and I met. I was presenting at the Dabble Dane Arts by Local conference back in March, I believe. And I was talking about songwriting, which is something I also teach at Girls Rock Camp. So, and all of the lessons that I've taught and the lessons that I've learned from the campers over the years really helped inspire and inform what I put in this book.
So I know you started out actually as a physical therapist.
Yes, I did.
So were you always a singer-songwriter from a little kid on?
Great question. So I grew up in a musical creative household. It wasn't my parents' profession, but my mom starred in a lot of musical theater stuff when I was growing up. So I always saw her on the stage performing. My dad was a tire salesman, and then they went into business to have a service station, but he played accordion and trombone and the drums, and we would sit at the piano when I was little, and I'd be the left hand and he'd be the right hand, and we'd play boogie woogie tunes. So I always had music in my house, and I played clarinet and saxophone in the middle school, high school bands. Actually came here to UW-Madison to study psychology and was in the UW marching band.
Yeah.
So music was always a part of my life in that way. And I loved to write poems. My mom was a poet as well. And so she inspired me to play with language. But when I got into grad school for physical therapy, I wasn't doing anything musical, and I was losing my mind because I needed that creative connection. So I started kind of dabbling and playing the guitar. And it seemed like a natural progression as someone who liked to play with words to try to put words to the music as well. So I just started playing around with the songwriting process and was lucky enough to connect with people who really taught me and mentored me and encouraged me. And then here I am many years later making a living making music, which is still sometimes like, pinch me. I can't believe I get to do this.
I know that is kind of almost every artist's dream, right?
Really, it is. And, honestly, too, I think the one thing for me that I've had to do is just sort of understand that you don't have to be a household name to be successful, right? If you're doing what you love with people that you love, and you're, able to still have food on the table and relationships with people you love, I think that counts as success. So I'm definitely not a household name, which is fine, right? But mm-hmm. I love what I do, and I get to do what I love. So life is good.
So when did you get to make the leap, or basically make the leap
Yep.
from physical therapy? And what was the moment that you said, this is it?
Yeah. Well, so I was playing in a band from 2002 to 2008 called Clear Blue Betty. And I was the lead singer, main songwriter, guitarist in that band. And my husband got an opportunity to do a year of job training in Texas. And I'd been in practice as a PT for about 6 years at that point, 7 years. And I wasn't licensed to practice in Texas, but I'd also been doing all this music on the side. And it was really becoming like, I don't sleep. I work all week, I play all weekend. And then when I'm not sleeping or, working, I'm playing. And so it was, I started going down part-time for a while. But then when my husband and I moved to Texas for that job training that he was doing, that's when I was like, I'm not licensed to practice here. Let's just see what happens. And so I took classes in, music business publishing so I could kind of understand the business piece of it more. I was making trips to Nashville to kind of learn more about the craft of songwriting. I was also at that point trying to pitch songs I had written, hopefully to somebody who was like famous that could put it on their record and, make me a bunch of money, which I later learned was not part of my calling. But that's when I really just decided to take the plunge.
Were you in Austin?
We were in Houston.
Oh, in Houston, because Austin is such a big music city.
It is. I did make several trips to Austin during that time. But Houston has a pretty incredible music scene. And Texas as a state is very supportive of musicians. There's an incredible music scene there. There's a lot of venues and a lot of support for the music arts. There might be support for all the arts down there. I just don't know that much about what the scene was like for that. Anyone outside of the music scene, but I do know that was a good place for me to take a plunge.
So you got to go, you came back and kept with it. Yep. And then not very long after that, you started Girls Rock.
Yeah.
What was the impetus for that?
Yeah. Well, actually right before I left town, there was a dad of a kiddo who he'd been trying to get his daughter into the Chicago Girls Rock camp for years and kept getting put on the waiting list. And he was like, you should start a Girls Rock camp here in Madison. And I was like, that's a great idea, but I'm leaving for a year. So let's get together for coffee when I get back. And so in 2009, when we returned from Texas, he and I sat down and just kind of chatted about it. And then we found out there was another woman who had actually started sort of a mini camp in Viroqua who was interested in starting one up here in Madison. So the three of us partnered together and teamed up and kicked off the first Girls Rock camp in Madison in 2010.
And so what have you learned the most about doing the camp?
Oh, wow. It's a ton of work, but it makes all the difference to surround yourself with people who understand the mission of what your organization is trying to accomplish. And so there's a book by Jim Collins called Good to Great that talks about how companies go from being, sort of middle of the pack to like really successful. And one of the chapters is about getting the right people on the bus. And so one of my jobs as the music director now of Girls Rock Camp Madison is to hire all the staff that work for camp. So I just try to seek out people, or, sometimes people know other people who work for me will help recruit other people who they're like, oh, this person gets what you're doing. This person will totally get what you're doing. And so just making sure that when you bring people on board, that they are already sort of living and breathing the mission and that they understand what they're a part of. Because really, we're not at that camp to crank out people with musical perfection. It has nothing to do with perfection. It has to do with the collaboration piece and the learning to listen to each other and to speak up and share your creative thoughts.
And self-esteem.
Exactly. Yes. Yes. And so much of that, I think, especially, when you're dealing with a girls rock camp, I think is combating some of that mean girl culture where, well, in order for me to succeed, you need to be put down. And it's like, that's not how a band works. We all need to spiral upward together. So I just make sure that, that's part of that self-esteem building process really is like, hey, I put out an idea and my band built on it. Right. So first of all, being able to, be brave and put those ideas out there, but also to be the kind of person who, when someone else puts their idea, you build on it instead of tearing it down. So just trying to impact, I think, from a grassroots level, the culture of the folks who come through our camp. That's the mission. That's what we're after.
Well, and that's such a critical time in development. And so many artists don't have that support system.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you did, which was awesome.
Yes, absolutely. I am forever grateful to my mom and dad for the space that they gave me to create and the support they gave me in that process.
And so I think I often hear in these podcasts that people wish they would have told their younger self, it was okay to be different. It was okay to do. So do you kind of see a theme in the young women, they're young girls that come to the camp?
Yeah. It's interesting. I think, some kids show up because it's fun and they go there with a friend and they love music and they're already kind of on top of the world and happy-go-lucky. And then other kids are really profoundly impacted by, wait a second, I was just part of something. And that's really powerful, I think, because I think we've all experienced moments where we felt like the outcast or the weirdo or the one who didn't quite fit in. I mean, I've always felt like sometimes I'm a little too much for people or too big and loud. And I think at this camp, we're like, it's okay to be extra. It's good to be big and loud. We're going to make a lot of noise. And, being big and bold on stage is actually a really awesome thing. So giving kids that permission to kind of let their freak flag fly, I think is really empowering.
So let's turn to your own music. And we were talking earlier about an album that was probably not long after you got back here after Dust, where I saw this real rebellious streak and this idea that you could be different and it's okay, etc. But then you had an instrumental album.
That was born of COVID. So funny. Okay. So that, I put out albums of my own and collaborative albums, 18 records in the last
which is a
24
lot.
years. Yes. But I don't do it alone for sure. And the Dust record was in 2012. And that was kind of like my big, I'm going to pull out all the stops. I did a Kickstarter campaign crowdfunding thing to fund that record. I hired a bunch of hotshot studio musicians and a producer, and we really invested a ton in the making of that album. And I think I had been spending a lot of time in Nashville prior to that. So there was a lot of that kind of influence of that country rock. Americana.
You can definitely hear that. Yes.
But there were several songs on that record that I had written prior to quitting my day job. And I think the one that we chatted about before the podcast began here was a song called Chasing the Sun. I always joke that's a song about my imaginary daughter, Josie, and what a rebel she is. But there was, I think, a lot going on at that period of my life when I quit my day job. That was me trying to justify embracing a life of creativity and art instead of, I went to school for all these years to be a physical therapist, and everybody's going to think I'm bananas for quitting my day job. Mm-hmm. And I've struggled with that guilt and I don't know, just like sort of what's everybody going to think. And I think some of the songs on that record will reflect that rebelliousness that I was trying to justify.
Well, maybe talk to me. How has your music evolved? So that was, like you said, twang of Nashville in it, a little bit country rockish.
Yeah.
And, obviously, you did a piece that was all instrumental.
Yeah. So that instrumental album was me playing in my studio when everything was shut down and I couldn't play any shows. And I have a program that I use in my studio called Logic Pro X. It's kind of something you can use on a MacBook Pro. Prior to that, I'd always done little bits of recording in my studio but I had never really spent any focused time playing with all the weird effects and sounds. And so I was just down there messing around, and I recorded, I think it's something ridiculous, like 19 songs, but I made all these weird loops and did all this strange instrumentation. And I was like, I'm just putting it out there. So that was fun, but it really, I mean, I learned a ton in the process of doing that. But yeah, and I also feel like thematically, I mean, I started writing when I was 23, I think, and now I'm 50. So that's a lot of life and experience. And, you know, I think in each decade of my life, I've kind of had different, had sort of a different focus. And now I feel like I do a lot more preaching and teaching in my music because I've learned a few more things that I want to share with the world. But I'm still figuring it out. I don't know. It's a big adventure.
So how has the sound changed, do you feel like?
Yeah. Well, so my trio, Gin, Chocolate, and Bottle Rockets, I play guitar, and my bandmate Sean Delmarks plays keyboard and bass. And then other bandmate Jen Farley plays percussion. All three of us sing. So we do a ton of like 3-part harmonizing.
Yeah, it's lovely.
Blending our voices. And that's something that has been a real fun thing to explore with people that I love that are insanely talented. And we've created a tribute show to Linda Ronstadt, Emmylou Harris, and Dolly Parton. So those are three pretty different artists, but they blended their voices. Like three of us have blended our voices. Okay. And so there's been a lot of inspiration in looking at their careers and how they came together. I think that has influenced us.
I was going to ask you, who was your favorite songwriter, singer-songwriter?
Oh, yeah. You know, I'm kind of all over the place. I feel like KT Tunstall, who wrote Black Horse and a Cherry Tree, is one of my favorite writers. I've seen her perform live too, and she's just a incredible performer and fun and engaging. I just love watching her on stage, and I really enjoy her guitar playing and her voice. So she's been an influence. But early on, I think it was like the Indigo Girls. I was really into the Bare Naked Ladies for a long time. I love how clever and fun they are. And yeah, I mean, everything from like rock bands like Tonic and Bon Jovi to country. I mean, I love Dolly Parton. She's an incredible writer.
Yeah, it's an incredible writer.
And has, you know, written songs you wouldn't even know, right? She's, in addition to performing, she's also helped other people with their careers. And I love her, admire her. So yeah, it's really, I guess I listen to all of it and soak up whatever I can to make my writing better.
Well, I know Spotify is not necessarily kind to the artist, but I would say one thing it does well is it has opened up a whole avenue to people finding you.
Yes.
You know, absolutely. I call it stumbling.
Exactly.
I've stumbled onto all sorts of artists I didn't know.
Yep.
Ever since I started working from home, and I just stumble, right?
Yep.
And so that's been grand because then you know, say, oh, what about like this? And then they might find you.
Exactly. Yeah. And right. I mean, it is kind of the pennies game. They call it when you get a streaming. Time. I mean, I think I get a check from my distributor that there's an online website you can upload your music to, and it'll send it out to Apple Music and iTunes or Spotify, Pandora, all those places. And I mean, maybe like every 3 months of the, however many records I have out there, I get a check for like $15.
Right. I know. Right?
It's I'm like, whoa, look at that. That's obviously not my primary source of income as a musician. But you're right. At the same time, like I'm not touring to Japan, and maybe somebody over there found my music that never would have been able to connect with it. So I think it's fine. I have, I don't know. My primary source of income as a musician is through performances, and I'm happy with that.
So as you look at the next 5-10 years, where do you see your music evolving?
Yeah. It's funny. So I'm a mom too, and I have a 13-year-old boy child at home who I feel like I'm in a really good place with music right now. And the shows that I'm doing, I'm enjoying. So I want to kind of hold steady right now and just make sure that I'm still there for him as he's growing up and going to be gone before I know it. There's friends my age whose kids are growing and out of the house, and I'm like, how does that happen? So I and I have girls rock camp. That's obviously very time intensive. I have a ton of passion for that. So I would love to, keep playing maybe more like sit down shows where people are really intensely listening versus like bar gigs where people are cheering for the Packers. That's
right.
kind of the dream. But sometimes in the winter when it's slow and there's not a lot going on, you just like go play those shows because it's like I got to keep my chops up and I just want to play.
Mm-hmm.
And gosh, I could be working in a coal mine somewhere. This is a much better place to be making some money. So yeah, that's a great question. I don't have a great answer for it, but I do know that I'm happy where I'm at right now. And I think I'm just looking for whatever the next opportunity is that happens to fall into my lap.
Well, obviously one thing you did was write a book.
Yes.
And maybe you could share.
Absolutely.
And that's, we met through this book because I, as a creative person and I write poetry, there's such a huge tie between poetry and songwriting.
Yes.
So I was really interested.
Yeah.
But you said it was because of camp that made you decide to write the book?
So there were a lot of things that came together for me. I think it was in 2019 that I actually started like really scribbling down ideas for this book. And I had, in addition to teaching at Girls Rock Camp, done workshops from time to time on different aspects of songwriting. And I'd also done a after school club at West High School many years ago. So I had just all these little like one sheet bullet point handouts that I would show up with and talk to people about. And I was like, gosh, if I just turn those into paragraphs, it could be a book someday. And another musician friend of mine, I ran into him at a coffee shop, Nick Venturella, and I was like, I should write a book. He's like, you should write a book. And I still remember that moment where I was like, I could do this. So I started working on it, but then the pandemic hit and I was like, everything shut down, including my brain. But then in 2023, or 2022, I started like, I'm just going to sit down for 2 hours a week at the library, shut off all my devices except my computer where I'm typing, and start working on this. And then I met a copy editor at one of our ladies rock camps. Her name is Jen Morey. And she came up to me when I was like, hey, I've been kind of working on a book. I mentioned it offhand in the songwriting class that I teach there. And she's like, tell me about your book. And I was like, well, I've been working on it. I don't really know what I'm doing. And she's like, well, I'm a copy editor. And I was like, oh, help me. How do you write complete sentences? Because I'm a songwriter and I'm a bullet point person. So she really helped me kind of pull a lot of it together. So it was just a matter of kind of being methodical. And, my life isn't such that I get paid to write a book. This was an investment and a labor of love. But just setting aside a couple hours a week to plow through it, and then having somebody like Jen who helped keep me, able to focus on the creative piece of it and not the logistical, like, do I use italics or quotes for this thing? I mean, there's so many things about the English language that when you're singing those words, you don't need to know.
It doesn't matter.
Exactly. So I just kind of plugged away at it. And I did a focus group with four ladies rock campers, actually, who I was like, hey, can we just do like a pilot read through of this book and I'll teach a class with it and you can give me feedback in exchange for free admission to the class. And those 4 women were incredible that helped me kind of shape and reshape this book. And then I released it in December of 2023. And here it is.
Actually, that's quite fast if you had just really worked on it in 2023.
Yeah, well, yeah. So I think I started really like hammering it out. Like December 2022 is when I like recommitted to really like focusing on the writing. And I didn't realize when I jumped back into it, like how much I actually had done in 2019. Because it was such a blur in the pandemic that I don't know, I killed too many brain cells during that time. I came back to it. I was like, oh, okay, I've got a good start on this. I can do this. So yeah. And I've always loved words. So I kind of like to sit down and just philosophize. And, it's it's funny too, because my undergraduate degree is in psychology and my master's degree is in physical therapy and my life is in music. So I feel like it's sort of like the mind, body, spirit connection. Okay. And it's all about health, really.
Yes.
Right? All of those, in my opinion, are things that allow people to bring their best self forward and overcome their fears and obstacles and embrace their higher selves.
Well, and tying back to the pandemic was so hard on creative people, especially people who performed, dancers, all sorts of things. And it sounds like you did the instrumental pieces to help, but what were the things that really helped you the most?
To get through the pandemic?
Yeah, and to get back to feeling like you could once again perform.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, honestly, when everything shut down, I was in rough shape for a while. I mean, it was not a good space for me. I'm a very extroverted person. Mm-hmm. And so solitude and confinement are not things that I thrive on. I learned a lot about video production during that time and how to like split 3 people that were singing in 3 different spaces into one space to make it sound like we were all singing together with my bandmates. And so I just tried to like latch on to little projects like that. And then I did some video broadcasts during the pandemic. We did a virtual girls rock camp. So there were little anchors like that. Mm-hmm. But it was hard. And I remember the first time I actually got to go back out and play, I just remember feeling very like stimulus overload. Like it went from being in a, blank room with all white walls to like suddenly like, oh, there's people in front of me. So it took a while to get back into the flow of things. But I also think that everything being shut down during the pandemic was a good thing for me in that it helped me prioritize the things that really were in keeping with my personal mission in life. I think sometimes when you're your own boss or you're an independent contractor as a musician or whatever sort of creative work you do, you say yes to everything. And it's okay to do that for a while, but then I think you need to focus and narrow down. And you can't please everybody and be everywhere at the same time. So there were good things that came out of it, even though it was a very hard time.
Oh, well, I do have one last question before we get an opportunity to hear you sing. Yeah. Is if you had to give some kind of advice to, someone that even my age that was really just not being creative, but was interested in songwriting or was interested in what advice would you give?
Yes, gosh. I think one of the things I'd love to tell people when they're coming like to ladies rock camp or girls rock camp is it's rock and roll, not rocket science. If you learn 2 chords on a guitar or like figure out 2 places to put your fingers down on a couple chords on the keyboard and you just spew out some words, like you can write a song. There's a very, you can make it complicated, but you can also keep it super simple and you have to start somewhere. Mm-hmm. And there's some great songs that are radio hits that are based on 2 chords. So if you just learn a little bit and put something out there and then build on that, you can do it. And I think once you find a creative community to learn from and showcase those things, you can just kind of find your group that will encourage you along the way.
Well, I think that's pretty wise advice.
Good. Are you going to come to Ladies Rock?
It actually sounds like it'd be a lot of fun.
Oh, it's a lot of fun. We have a blast. And really, too, like, I think it's that whole thing, like, surrounding yourself with people who get it. One of the other things that I love is a website called February Album Writing Month, or FAWM, FAWM.org. Oh. So every February, there's a challenge put out songwriters all over the world to try to write 14 songs in 28 days. Oh. And it's all of these people who are like, hey, I just threw up some lyrics. And then I did this last year. I mean, I've done this for, I think 2006 was the first year that I did it. So I've been doing it for a while. But last year, I wrote some songs and like posted little MP3s of me performing them. But there was one, I'm like, hey, I'm just going to throw up these lyrics. Anybody want to bite? And there was some like trio band from the UK. It sounded like three guys like playing in their garage that took the words and made a song out of it. And I was like, that's so cool. And
That is cool.
I've had other friends who like just threw up lyrics, and then somebody like from, Texas grabbed it and started strumming a guitar and singing their words. And they're like, oh, I didn't know that could happen. So there's just all these beautiful ways you can collaborate with people either online or come to Ladies Rock Camp or Girls Rock Camp in person, to just find other people that are interested in doing the same thing and just getting started like you might be.
That was one of the things that was the most surprising about the Layered Onion is we started during the pandemic and we were international and didn't anticipate that at all.
Huh.
And we have artists where we have someone who's done a children's book and then they have someone from a completely different country that they met, by working with us that have done the art.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's exactly like that. Very
exactly.
cool.
Yeah. Well, and I guess the other advice I give people a lot of times when it comes to songwriting is find your voice and then find the people who like it instead of trying to chase something that already exists and say, oh, well, if I could write like Miley Cyrus or if I could sound like, Bruno Mars, like then I would be the next big thing. And it's like, well, but who are you and what is your voice and what do you have to share and what is your sound? And it takes a while to discover those things, but I think you just need to be the best version of you possible.
Wise advice. Yes. So, all right. Well, I think we'll get you set up so you can sing.
All right. This is Chasing the Sun about my imaginary daughter, Josie. Josie was born on the East Interstate. Daddy drove like the wind, but she just couldn't wait. Been on the run up through this very day with the wind in her hair and a smile on her face. Oh, how many times you look back on it all and you wish that you tried. Oh, how many times do you live before you die? Chasing the sun, holding your torch high, chasing the sun, trying to catch that fire. Josie was told back when she was a child, you can't always have it your way all the time. With a heavenly laugh and a devilish smile, she said, you haven't a clue what I'm made of inside. Oh, how many times you look back on it all and you wish that you tried. Oh, how many times do you live before you die? Chasing the sun, holding your torch high, chasing the sun, trying to catch that fire. Chasing the sun, holding your torch high, chasing the sun, trying to catch that fire, chasing the sun, like a candle burning bright, chasing the sun, trying to catch that fire. Na 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 na, 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 na na na. Come on, na 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 na, 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 na 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 na. Woo! kick. Thank you.